Our blue planet has experienced 5 distinct winters characterized by heavy snowfall. We refer to these time periods as ice ages. Over the course of hundreds of thousands of years, these ice ages occurred. Similarly, the previous ice age on Earth was rather long, lasting for thousands of years. People during the latest ice age hunted in packs and lived in underground caverns. Approximately 20 to 25,000 years ago, during the same last ice age, a Siberian hunting group set out to find game, ambling around and exploring the underbrush, caverns, and rocks. Unbeknownst to them, this band of adventurers veered off course and into a whole new universe. Nobody on this hunting team had any idea that they were slipping and steading as they moved along the ice trail was really just a brief link connecting the two massive continents. The reason this path was suggested is because since the oceans froze during the ice age, the water level had dropped significantly. In the waters, dunes, little islands, and passages between islands formed. One such technique was this one as well. Through the narrow road they came, this hunter group carried the genes of the old world. They made this place their permanent home after arriving in the new world. The last ice age on Earth ended 11,000 years ago. Once again, the water level climbed. Then that little dry channel went down into the depths once more, by which this band of hunters arrived in the Americas. As a result, the land connection between the two worlds was severed. We refer to this area as the Bering Strait. A point is also located on this strait, from where the gap between the old and new worlds is barely 85 kilometers wide. However, the 85 kilometers would have taken the ancient man 2,500 years to traverse. How were those first several millennia in America? Could you tell me who found this planet and how? How did these people who lived here before us end up here? How then did this very nation rise to the status of a global superpower? Greetings from Epic Tales, and my name is Thomas. For more video, like, comment, share, and subscribe Epic Tales. History of America will tell you the story of that long-lost homeland. The expedition of hunters that ventured into the New World continued to expand across this vast, parched landscape for countless years. They created a plethora of villages and islands and established huge civilizations. Give this map a look. An extremely ancient map depicting the American continent, sometimes known as the New World. The Aztec Empire was once a powerful civilization in the area that is now Mexico. This empire encompasses an area of over 200,000 square kilometers, comprised over 500 states, and was home to 6 million people. The Maya civilization's epicenter was located in the region to the south of the Aztec Empire. Around 4,000 years ago, this culture flourished. His status in the realms of art and culture was immense. The Inca Empire followed the Maya as another prominent civilization in the area. The American nation of Ecuador was the starting point for the conquest of Chile and Argentina by this empire. Roughly 12 million people lived in his realm. There were several villages on this continent, in addition to the 3 main civilizations. It was in the West Indies that the Arawak people established permanent settlements. Tribes of indigenous peoples once roamed the Americas, from what is now Canada to what was then Argentina. The majority of them resided in modest communities, often called villages. They farmed maize extensively because it was their favorite crop. There were millions of these people who came to the New World and loved corn. Meanwhile, the ancient world was home to some 5 million people. Millions of individuals, however, were completely oblivious to the fact that these two groups existed. Actually, they didn't know of any other universe, nowhere else in history, on any map, or in the recollections of humans. Reason being, 11,000 years ago, the day's communication was severed. That there are tales to be told is, indeed, correct, discussing the arrival of some outcasts from the old world on the New World's islands. Even more so, a few of them put pen to paper. A faraway foreign nation is mentioned in Chinese poetry that was written over 2 centuries ago. This land was called Fusang in Chinese poetry. Out of 10 worlds is the literal translation, suggesting that this location is otherworldly. According to the poet, Fusang's coasts lie to the east of the East Sea. If one continues to travel another 5,000 kilometers eastward after touching down there, another ocean arrives, this one azure, enormous and boundless. Perhaps it's the Fusang America. Reason being that China's eastern neighbor is the continental United States. The reason and the true journey start once you cross it into the Atlantic Ocean. Similarly, in 458, a Buddhist monk named Hui Shen from Afghanistan and his 4 companions set out on an eastern journey from China. He had been away for 40 years, and according to Chinese traditions, which are called Fusang, additionally, he documented the local climate in his travels. The Norse Vikings left Hui Shen 500 years ago. Even Europe made it to the Americas. They made their home in what is now Canada, in the region of Newfoundland. There are still models of these communities around. In the same vein as the Chinese and the Vikings, there are Muslims who assert, during the reign of Abdul Rahman III, an Umayyad monarch of Spain, they arrived in the Americas. Muslims say they were the first to colonize the area, erect mosques, and spread the religion. The Hindu faith maintains that the Native Americans also revered their deities. A Hindu from India supposedly made it to the United States from that location. Because of this, the indigenous peoples of the Americas all worship the same deities. Such assertions abound. And whether or not these assertions are accurate is irrelevant. What set this island and planet apart was its discoverer. And I related it to the Old World, having accurately grasped that this was a new world, where journeys began for those coming in and going out. Neither the Chinese nor the Buddhist Pathans were responsible for making this connection, or the exploits of Muslim or Hindu mariners, nor were they able to comprehend dual realities. The estrangement between the two realms persisted for a very long time. The Old Worlders thought Africa and Europe were the final frontiers of humanity. Even the indigenous peoples of the Americas thought there was nothing but water beyond their borders. And just that. We may not have noticed this distance for hundreds of years, but once it's out of sight, it's out of mind. However, the arrival of the 15th century occurred. However, Age of Discovery. All throughout the world, this altered the balance of power on a global scale. Humans from the Old World, and notably Europe, were compelled to leave his safe space and discover uncharted territories. The arrival of Muslim conquerors brought about this change. How did this change occur? It was 25,000 years ago that the indigenous peoples of this land departed. In this respect, Europe dominated the world prior to the Renaissance. It was a powerful force. Throughout the Middle Ages and beyond, the Roman Empire ruled over Europe, and he was king over a great deal of Asia. As time went on, the Roman Empire shrank until it was barely smaller than the Byzantine Empire. Is this empire still standing? The city of Constantinople was all that it was. Put. Relics from bygone days and formidable fortifications were all that kept this empire afloat. After that, in 1453, the Turks erased all evidence of the Roman Empire. Sultan Muhammad Fateh of the Turks ended the Roman Empire with his conquest of Constantinople. An additional city's name, which went from Constantinople to Istanbul. In the 15th century, when Europe's dominance waned, much mourning ensued. As well as being a sacred European city, Constantinople served as a major military outpost. Orthodox Christianity's epicenter was there. Constantine, the first Christian ruler of Rome, resolved the dispute. Additionally, Constantine constructed the majestic Hagia Sophia here. As a result, Christians across Europe held this city in high regard. However, the city held additional importance beyond devotion, because it was essential for transporting goods from China and other parts of Asia to Europe. Central Asian marketplaces for Chinese silk, spices, gems, metals, etc. This route would be used by many more products on their way to Europe. Once the Ottoman Empire captured Constantinople, this route was effectively blocked. The economic and spiritual suffering of the Europeans was exacerbated by this loss. The closing of trade routes worsened joblessness in Europe economically. People started becoming hungry as their incomes plummeted. People used to throw their children in the trash because they were too hungry to care for them. Many farmers took their own lives or became enslaved by the crushing interest payments on their loans. People turned to looting as a means of subsistence, since they were both hungry and helpless. Pedestrians in Europe became the targets of an alarming spike in crime not long after. Would wear an upward gaze instead of a downward one. The crooks hiding in the houses would hurl stones at passing pedestrians, trying to smash their heads. The next step was to salvage whatever valuables could be found on the clothing of the victims. Consequently, it was safest to walk with one's head held high. The well-off had hired bodyguards, while the common folks were slaughtered in broad daylight. Similarly, the federal guards could do nothing. The conquest of Constantinople triggered this economic catastrophe throughout Europe, and when trade channels are sealed. Another spiritual catastrophe according to the strict devout Christians' beliefs, that Muslims were gradually encroaching on Europe, the center of Christianity. This group of people therefore saw the period as a trying one for Christianity. The geographical extent of Christian areas is decreasing daily. They worried that Christianity or its influence might fade away if things continued as they were. The religious and business classes of Europe set out to find a new world. If there was such a world, where would they find it? They had no idea that a whole new world lay just 4.5 kilometers to the west, almost as big as the entire planet, and a treasure trove of raw materials like oil, gold, and silver. They were only aware of the routes leading eastward to Japan and China. Next, at a European home, topics pertaining to China and Japan were broached. But why is it being done? Simply put, Marco Polo's journey has become a veritable European bestseller. Marco Polo spelled Japan Cipango and China Cathay. He mentioned that the imperial residence in Japan has gold-covered roofs. Golden accents adorn the doors and windows, while the majority of the flooring has a golden plating. He went to extreme lengths to portray China and its Mongol ruler, Kublai Khan, as well-off nations, to the point of exaggeration. Regardless, the travelogue by Marco Polo was penned over 150 years ago. Nevertheless, Polo's travelogue served as the sole beacon of optimism for the destitute Europeans. This travels of Marco Polo inspired the European youth that I really need to figure out how to get to Japan and China so I can steal their wealth. Marco Polo had sprinkled them with stories. The issue, though, was that the Turks had now barred the land path. The other option was to go via Egypt across the Mediterranean. Even this path was conquered by the Muslim Mamluks. Islamic states were present all along the Mediterranean Sea, from Egypt to Morocco. That launched attacks on merchant ships bound for Europe. From that point on, Europe too couldn't find a safe route. This meant that Muslims were effectively besieging Europe. It was explorers like Bartolomeo Diaz who charted a course across Africa that eventually led to Asia. This path, however, was somewhat lengthy. The time required to traverse a one-way path would be months. At this point, the Europeans didn't know which way to go to Asia, which is the shortest and also serves their interest, so that they might trade their way to prosperity by traveling to Asia via this route. It was during this time of crisis that an obscure Italian sailor stepped forward. He asserted his knowledge of the fastest path to Japan and China in Asia. He thought this was the only way to traverse the Atlantic Ocean in one continuous motion, and no powerful nation could ever threaten them in such a manner. The claim was enormous and might alter Europe's destiny. Christopher Columbus in his youth was the claimant. Columbus, who traveled the seas for the majority of his life, Columbus was born in Geneva, Italy. The travelogues of Marco Polo had as profound an impact on him as they had on others. He professed to be an adept at navigating by the stars, moon, and sun. That knowledge of the Earth's spherical shape was common among educated people back then, and so did Christopher Columbus. He reasoned that the Earth is spherical and that a direct route from Europe to the west would lead to
one will reach Cipango, i.e., Japan is 4,500 kilometers away.
The shortest way to Japan also led to the discovery of China, and eventually all of Asia. Columbus equated discovering Asia with finding a gold mine. You are free to carry as much gold to Europe as you choose. Yet, Columbus's aspirations extended beyond material prosperity. He also identified as a Christ-bearer. Actually, a man named Christopher had a legendary legend in Christian history, who crossed the river while bearing the body of Jesus Christ. In Christian history, this Christopher was recognized as the one who bore the Christ. Similarly to the renowned figure, the sailor Christopher Columbus too had dreams about. In historical records, Christopher arranged for Jesus Christ to cross the river. He will likewise abandon the Christian ship when it goes down. To him, the only way for Christianity to spread was to discover a new world, where the Christian empire of greatness, comparable to the Roman Empire, is founded. So, in his fantasies, Columbus would bring Christian wealth to Europe and a treasure trove of gold, started making their way through European courts. He traveled to England via Portugal after visiting Italy. In an effort to attract investors, he constantly promoted the notion of traveling westward. Europe was then in a precarious position. Despair had already shattered its back. Realistically, neither monarch nor queen consented to aid him, although there were other factors at play. Throughout, Columbus maintained his resolve and persisted in pursuing his plan. He first set foot in Spain in 1485. In those days, Ferdinand II and Isabella were the monarchs of Spain. Columbus attempted to meet the Queen in Spain for 7 long years. On the other hand, the monarchy was unscheduled. Since the monarch and queen were occupied with driving Muslims out of Spain, in 1491, when the Muslim stronghold of Granada was on the verge of collapse, inviting Columbus to her court was the Queen's decision. Columbus told the Queen about his ideas and told her they were fantastic. In any event, it would be successful. The countries he planned to investigate, namely Japan and China, he declared, Spanish wealth would skyrocket if this project were to succeed. Additionally, he claimed that the new Asian territories that Columbus would explore would have It was simple to spread Christianity and convert the locals under Spanish rule. Partially motivated by wealth and maybe even by religious feelings, Queen Isabella, Columbus was granted permission to embark on this journey, and financial support was announced for it. At the court of Spain, Columbus achieved his first success. However, Queen Isabella was unaware. She thought Columbus was trying to trick her. To what end is the Queen the only one involved? Even the sailors and crew members who accompanied Columbus on the journey were tricked by him. The level of deceit was such that it put everyone's life in jeopardy. What kind of deceit was that? His fellow sailors on the Columbus ship intended to murder him, but why? The Italian sailor was so anxious to reach Asia that he made certain promises to his crew. You may view this in the second episode of History of America, which is available here. In this first installment of our epic biography, we meet the iconic 44th President of the United States. For more video, like, comment, share, and subscribe Epic Tales. Have a nice day.